and my activist for social change is Susan B. Anthony. Her primary focus. Anthony's activist lifestyle started very early in her life. She advocated for the abolishment of slavery. Her contributions in this movement led her to a primary activist focus that lasted around 5 decades of her life: women's rights. Anthony was a woman suffragist. She was a primary leader in the women's suffragist movement and fought in gaining women the right to vote in America. Her motivations. A huge contribution to her activist lifestyle was her religious background. Anthony was a Quaker, also known as the member of Society of Friends, and this religion taught individuals equality of all before God. When Anthony became a teacher in 1848, she realized how unfair the gender pay gap was between men and women. While men made $10 a month, women only made $2.50, which is actually crazy. This unequal treatment, along with her Quaker background, made Anthony want to fight for gender equality in America and advocate for women's rights. Organizations. Anthony founded the American Equal Rights Association in 1868, which is an organization that advocated for rights and suffrage of individuals of any race or gender. She also founded the National Women's Suffrage Association, NWSA, alongside her friend and activist partner Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This organization opposed the 15th Amendment due to its lack of inclusion with gender. In this association, Anthony fought for women to be included in this amendment. Both of these organizations, founded by Anthony, shaped her work. They allowed her to prioritize women's suffrage and gave her a platform to use her voice and state her opinions. Involvement. Anthony was very involved in the women's suffragist movement. She led suffragist groups and was even president of NWSA. Anthony spoke at conventions, campaigned for women's property rights, and served on committees throughout the suffragist movement. She was a very involved activist, doing everything she could to speak up for women's rights. Evolution of strategies. In the beginning of her activist fight for women's suffrage, Anthony delivered many demanding speeches throughout the country. These speeches limited the spread of their ideas. So, to combat this, Anthony and Stanton formed their own newspaper called The Revolution. This only allowed their ideas to reach new audiences. In this newspaper, Anthony wrote of women's rights as well as of ideas of equality. The rise of their newfound newspaper did not stop Anthony from traveling the country, but if anything, gave her more motivation to do so. She continued giving speeches throughout the country. However, in these travels, she started doing more. Anthony started and organized multiple suffrage groups in her journeys. She also started to circulate petitions advocating for women's suffrage and even participated in debates revolving around this subject. Even though her strategies of activism evolved over time, each strategy still gave her a voice. Matrix of oppression. In the matrix of oppression, Anthony addresses 3 of them throughout her activist work. The first one is sex. Anthony's fight for women's suffrage is a direct response to sexism. Individuals who are assigned male at birth automatically had a right to vote in American society. This did not apply to individuals assigned to female at birth. Natural-born males were granted more privilege than women. Anthony's efforts are trying to combat this privilege and create an equal playing field. Gender. Not only did Anthony advocate for women's rights, but she also advocated for gender equality. She fought for the equality for anyone of any gender. She felt that gender should not limit somebody's success. And the third matrix of oppression that she discussed is race. Before she started her activist work for sex/gender equality, Anthony fought racism. She was an abolitionist, meaning she advocated for the end of slavery. Ties to cross-cultural psychology. The first tie is powerlessness. Powerlessness is a kind of oppression. This kind of oppression is essentially when some people in society have power and others do not. This can mean specific people are more vulnerable to disrespectful treatment simply because they are viewed to have a lower status than other people. The reason the women's suffragist movement emerged was because women felt powerless in society. They were confined to the home to the ideas of the cult of domesticity. Susan B. Anthony stood up for these women who felt powerless and gave them a voice. She fought for women to feel more empowered in American society and eventually succeeded. Stereotypes. Stereotypes are created due to a society's culture. Stereotypes can consist of gender roles or unconscious expectations placed on certain individuals. In the United States, there are many stereotypes revolving around gender. For example, men are the breadwinners of the family, meanwhile, a woman is expected to stay home and take care of the children. Gender stereotypes have always placed women below men. This relates to Susan B. Anthony because her fight for women's suffrage only demonstrates her trying to break these stereotypes placed on women by giving them more rights. She challenged these stereotypes, allowing women more independence in American society. Enculturation. Enculturation is a form of cultural teaching. It is how individuals learn different cultural behaviors, cultural ways of thinking, and even feelings. Enculturation takes place because these cultural specific behaviors are passed down from generation to generation, and these behaviors do differ per culture. For the longest time in American culture, ways of thinking and behaving towards gender roles were set in stone. In the 1800s to the early 1900s, women were expected to marry and have children. This enculturation made women dependent on men. Susan B. Anthony broke out of this enculturation mold. She never married or had children and instead decided to dedicate her life to fighting for women's rights. At the time, she didn't realize how she was going against enculturation, but her life only proved that women can be independent. Why I chose this activist. I chose Susan B. Anthony as my activist because as a woman myself, I wouldn't have the rights I have today without her. All of her efforts made it possible for me to have the right to vote today. I was able to vote in the 2024 presidential election because of Anthony's, as well as many other women's perseverance to give women more rights in American society. Thank you.